You taking questions? Judith?
Just to ask you about you're talking about democratic legitimacy, but is it not fair to say that a lot of people in Europe now are kind of had enough of enlargement? There's an economic crisis and they're kind of saying, okay, let's stop this until we actually get things right. And the further enlargement, is that kind of not going to, I suppose, distract from the real business of the EU? And that's going to go flying in the face of what most EU citizens think.
The support for the enlargement differs when I compare it 5 years ago, or even more, was at the time when this public opinion being made at the time of the economic and financial crisis, where obviously everyone is very much focused on the most pressing issues around us, and those are issues related to the crisis of confidence in Europe. At the same time, it would be a mistake, to see that, or not to see that enlargement has never been a part of the problem. It has always been a part of the solution. If you look at the economic and other benefits, there are always definitely more pluses than any eventual minuses. And the enlargement, despite all the predictions, has made always the European Union stronger and not weaker. Now, of course, the point is to be made that particularly at a time like this one, it is important that we do it right. It is important that we strengthen the credibility of the process, that we will let only those fully prepared to assume their responsibility to join the European Union. Croatia is set to join the European Union the 1st July this year. It is a country which has undergo a more streamlined way of accession negotiations, with the opening and closing benchmark was focusing on the chapters related to the rule of law. Montenegro, we have started the accession negotiation last year, is going to be the first country where the chapters related to the rule of law are going to dominate the accession process throughout those years we're going to negotiate. So a lot of efforts with the support of the member states is being made, that we addressing those issues which in the past certain lessons learned have been made, and we making sure that the new members strengthen the European Union, and we're making sure that there is no need for any follow-up verification and monitoring mechanism.
I endorse everything that the Commissioner has said. I think it's also important to note that most of the economies which are growing most strongly in the European Union at the moment are new member states. And I think we really can't afford to ignore that fact. They have a buoyancy, they have the potential to grow and to contribute to the European economy in a very dramatic way. And I think that's an important lesson. I mean, we have to look at the facts of enlargement and the experience that we've had so far. Equally, when you look at, for example, the Western Balkans, 20 years ago, that's a region that was ravaged by war, and the European Union, amongst other partners, poured a lot of money and a lot of resources and put a lot of effort into trying to secure that region. Security in our neighbouring region is hugely important and in fact is vital and central to the economic stability of the European Union. So even if we forget about the reunification of Europe and we put aside the sort of the ideological or the romantic reasons for enlargement, and I believe strongly in those, but if you simply look at the economic case, it's very much in our interest that we encourage these countries on the European path, that we encourage them, and I mean legally, they have to comply with the acquis, they have to meet all of the criteria, the conditionality which the Commissioner mentioned, in order to ultimately, eventually join the EU. And by doing that, we are paving the way for stability, for security, for peace, for democracy in the neighbouring region and in the continent of Europe, and that is hugely important. It's in our interest, and it's also, from a very selfish point of view, it's also about expanding the single market. And as a country that relies hugely on exports to the single market, our biggest market, we export more to the EU than to any other part of the world. It's in our interest that that market continues to grow and expand. So whether you look at it from a cool and calculating economic perspective, or whether you look at it for historical and for emotional reasons, enlargement makes sense, and that's why Ireland has always been so supportive of it. And if we haven't demonstrated that to our citizens and we haven't shown it clearly, well, then we need to step up our game and demonstrate it more clearly, because it's in our interest to do so.
And if I may, just very quickly. No crisis is going to take away this argument about the huge transformative power of enlargement. And I think that has been clearly defined as one of those arguments behind the Nobel Peace Prize being given to the European Union for the way it has changed the whole European continent. Thank you.
Enzo?
Enzo Fatinella, Italian News Agency, ANSA. Jacques Delors, when he was president of the European Commission, he said that economy only will not solve the problems of Europe. The unity through economy is destined to failure. Don't you think, Minister Creighton, in a special way, don't you think that the Minister for Europe perhaps should take into consideration a view of a Europe of culture, where all culture has foundation of all values, like solidarity, justice, peace, democracy, so that everyone can feel, as you say in a statement this morning as well, everyone can feel that it's a part of this Europe and can look at Europe as a solution of all its problems. And afterwards, I have also a question for the enlargement of Europe. I was out of the Union, Europe is already there. I was a couple of years ago in Turkey, and I came in touch with the history of this rich country, which in many ways is our own history. Now, in a vision of Europe of culture, we cannot do without Turkey, which is an essential part of our own history. Like Ireland, for its Irish monks in the Middle Ages, was an integral part of Europe, which brought to Europe culture, values, and an Irish style of Christianity, or Italy, from where I came, and for which we admire the beautiful on the walls, reproduction on the walls, through the Renaissance, was also a great part of Europe. Thank you.
Thank you. I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think the European economy is hugely important, and with the huge numbers of people unemployed, it's absolutely imperative that we get the European economy back on track, and that we grow the economy, and that we give hope and opportunity to people, particularly to the younger generation, who are really struggling right across Europe at this point in time. But I mean, what makes us European? It's not just a single market. It's not just about a common currency. What makes us European is a set of values. It's a shared heritage. It's a sense of who we are. And while we have different countries with different traditions and very unique qualities, which I think are to be cherished, there is an appreciation of the variety, the tapestry, if you like, of of European culture and heritage, and it is a shared one. So I totally agree with you, and maybe we need to reawaken that a little bit. And actually, one of the features of our presidency is that we are running a very big cultural programme, both in Ireland and right across the EU, in all of the major cities and towns, and particularly capitals right across the EU, to talk a little bit about Irish culture, but also how that is interwoven into European culture and European history. And I think it's a great opportunity for us as presidency to do that, with hundreds of events around Ireland and hundreds more right across Europe. So I agree, and I think that under the competences as outlined in the Lisbon Treaty, there's a new European role in developing culture, and I know from the Irish point of view, Minister Jimmy Deehan is really exploring the opportunities that exist there for shared projects with other EU member states, between Irish artists and different cultural institutes and so on. So that's happening, and maybe we need to elevate that in terms of the priorities of the EU. But it is happening, and it's a new step, I think, if you like, since the Lisbon Treaty as well. So, but the values and our shared history is what makes us European, absolutely. And the question of Turkey, and I see my friend Egemen sitting just behind you, the Minister for European Affairs of Turkey. The relationship between the European Union and Turkey is a really vital one. It's vital for so many reasons. I don't need to point out the obvious, geopolitical and geostrategic reasons. It's a long road, that's for sure. But it's in our interest that Turkey continues on the road towards reform and towards the European agenda and European values, which I've spoken about. And I think that determination is there from the side of Turkey, and that determination, as we heard from our discussions with our EU ministers, is also there from the European Union side. There are some challenges, there's no doubt about that. There are some obstacles, but we hope that under the Irish presidency we can make some progress and that we can bring Turkey and Europe closer together, and I think that is an important aspiration.
Great.
And I could only concur with that statement. I mean, and indeed there was an important contribution earlier today by the Turkish representative, by the European minister. And for the very same reasons you have mentioned, we have these accession negotiations with Turkey, unfortunately. And that's also what we have discussed today. For the 5 consecutive presidency, we were unable to open any new chapter. By the same time, the role of the political dimension of our relationship has increased. But the debate today has shown that the member states would like to see, the accession negotiations being put back on track, that we open the chapters, that the reform process has a strong basis in opening new chapters, the reform process being the engine of the accession negotiations. I think it is not only in the interest of Turkey, through the chapters like the chapter 23, focusing on the fundamental freedoms and judicial reforms, to help Turkey to address the issue like the fundamental freedoms, like the freedom of expression, and it's also important that the European Union continues through the accession negotiations to be a benchmark for these reforms. So we only appreciate these regular meetings with our Turkish colleagues and looking for the ways with the member states and with Turkey to put the accession negotiations back on track.